Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Home Buyers Guide sessions. We are gonna hear again from our very special guest. For those of you who don't know who she is, I'm just gonna allow her to introduce herself to us once again.
Hi, everyone. This is Shirlyn Antonia with Royal LePage Real Estate Services. Thanks again, Brahim, for having me, and I'm looking forward to touching base with you on the part two segment of our Home Buyers Guide series, and of course, what are the steps involved this time.
Awesome. What are the steps?
Well, as we mentioned before, we wanted to touch base on what incentives that the government offered or any incentives for first-time home buyers. And I really wanted us just to quickly go through in this segment, again, what we primarily touched on, as well as guide them through on what the steps and the expectations are. Because once they sit with mortgage or financial advisors, these are the things that they're going to have in place. So I think it's very important for individuals to know these and be prepared beforehand. So that being said, we covered in the last segment what incentives and programs that were available for first-time home buyers. Today, we will briefly review some of these again, and to previously mention pertaining to what they need to do as the first-time home buyer going forward. And before getting started, it's important to do like a self-evaluation at home for yourself. Like, you know yourself better as an individual who's looking at going out there and getting a first home. You want to be able to assess yourself and to see what your circumstances are, and try to prepare beforehand, because as I said, it's important to sit with a financial advisor or mortgage broker to know if you can qualify and what are things that you would need to have. But when you do so, I will primarily say to you, sit, if it's with yourself or with your partner or whom you're hoping to do this with. If you have one or two or three people that's going to be on deed, to sit down and say, first of all, let's do a self evaluation, meaning like, what is your financial and what's your personal history, right? These are questions that the mortgage or anybody's going to ask you in order to determine if you qualify for a loan. So first of all, as I mentioned before, you need to be permanent residents or Canadian citizen, and making sure that you have never owned a home or investment property or inherited one or was gifted one or even co-owned one in order to qualify as a first-time home buyer. And then again, you say to yourself, okay, that being said, let's look at our situation. Have you ever been bankrupt? Do you have any liens against you? What's your credit score like? What's your credit history? Do you have anything pending on your credit report? Like, I will encourage anyone to pull a report in yourself, review that, because sometimes people think, oh no, I have a really good credit history. But then when it's being pulled by a financial advisor, there is something pending that you didn't know about, something that you owe or you didn't know. And there's something on there that's showing that there was some sort of fault in your part. So pull a report and see for yourself what your score is. If there's any negative thing on that report that will cause questions. And then again, you ask yourself things like, what's my liabilities like? If I want to qualify for a home and I have all these liabilities, I make say 50,000, but then I owe, at the end of the year 40,000. I only have 10,000. Can I really afford a home? So you have to ask yourself what's my liabilities are, and then again, am I making enough income to support my liabilities, and then yes, now own a home. Again, these are things that will be put to you, and these are things I think before you go and sit with somebody, that you have some of these answers, that you're not going to be sitting there like, oh, I didn't know you're going to be asking those questions, I didn't know things like this will come up. Because yeah, they are going to come up, right? And a lot of people want to own a home, but it's a little bit stronger in a sense when you have two or three individuals. Like, it could be a spouse, if not your spouse, if it's a sister and a brother. More people on the deed sometimes is better, because then you have more income and you can actually spread some of those liabilities a little bit. And again, you have to make sure that there is no negative impact on your score or anything out there that will say hinder you from getting that loan, or that person that you're hoping to go in with have a history of bankruptcy. So you got to know that there's transparency as in who you're going to bring in as part of this, mission to become a first-time home buyer. Um, then we go back to the situation where, hey, yeah, we have all those things. We haven't been bankrupt. Our score looks good. Do you have any savings? Have you started saving? Do I at least have 5% down plus enough for your closing costs?
Mhm.
So be prepared, get ready, have enough savings, have, at least 2 years history of your, your income, or where it is that you're employed for the past 2 years. Have you filed taxes at least 2 years worth, your T4s, your T1s, or your notes of assessment. These are things that's going to be asked for you to have in hand for anybody to on the financial side to review and to see if you're going to be able to qualify. So again, as I said, this is homework that you can do yourself. Start a PDF or start a file that you can say, I have all these different things. I've checklist this all. So when the time comes, I'm sitting down and being asked these questions, it's not gonna be like, oh my God, it's just too overwhelming for me. I didn't even know I'm gonna have all this stuff. Oh my God, I can't breathe. It's going to take me so long to get this stuff. No, you can prepare. You can have these things ready, and you can say to yourself, when the time comes, the information provided and the conversation is an easy one, because at least I have some of these things and I know and I'll prepare for the future. Now, when it comes to the part where we're going to be with a mortgage agent, again,
Mm.
they're going to look again to see what your earning potential is, or how much you've earned, or whether or not you can cover expenses. And of course, they're going to put you through the stress test, and they're going to come back and they're going to say, you know what, based upon all the different things that we've put together, this is how much you will be able to afford. That being said, once you hear that great news as to what you be able to can afford, and you call me or call another real estate agent, said, okay, Shirley, we are ready. We've got everything we think we want. We're ready. We just want you now to narrow down with us on the location or the type of home we want to invest in, or the first time home that we want to buy. You got to make sure that you're not going to start spending crazy. You're not going to be like, okay, we got to go ahead, but you know what? We really wanted this car, and we're going to go buy this car. You got to make sure that you keep things at the bare minimum, keep things stable for at least when the time comes to closing. Once you've closed and you have that house, I mean, closing means you purchase the house, and the house, you have the keys in hand, and you're now a proud homeowner. I mean, not because you got that pre-approval, you're going to do things differently. And I've seen this many times, whereas in they got the pre-approval, we have put in all of the offer. We have conditions that say, okay, fine, it's condition upon, financing, making sure everything is ordered. But then when the mortgage broker now revisits that client, they're like, oh my God, what happened? Your credit score has gone down, and we see that you purchased these things. It's going to be, I'm sorry, but unfortunately, you can't afford this home. And then, of course, you have individuals thinking, but what are we going to do now? So some of the things that they will tell you is like, try to pay down some of the expenses. I mean, do you have extra cash on hand? Do you have any way of maybe putting for more money down just to try and get you that pre-approval that you were approved for? So the steps are, as I mentioned, just going through your scenarios, going to evaluate yourself, getting all the different things that I mentioned again, looking at your report, having your notes of assessment, your taxes that you filed, any kind of employment letter, all these different things in hand. So when the time comes to this particular last stage of getting pre-approved, we can get the ball rolling. But I do advise again to keep everything stable. Try your best not to go into any debt, or to lose your job. Try to maintain that job, because when the time comes for closing, we want to be able to at least have the same kind of like information that would provide to us, and the approval from that bank for us to close. And that's the segment for today. Segment of today is just narrowing it down again from, from starting with the leases to tell you what you're going to do if you're leasing. And then when time comes for you to want to know if I want to buy and what incentives are. Now, these are the steps in place that I would encourage individuals to try for themselves to get prepared and ready for. So when the time comes when you're sitting down, that step where you think you're ready could be a little bit more lessened in a sense, rather than say, now we got to start preparing. You lessen that time between the mortgage broker and us going out now finding that home, because you've already had all these steps and all these different things in place. And I hope that makes sense.
Yes, yes. Thanks for providing all the steps. Few questions I have. Um, what's your advice on making big purchases? Let's say, for example, financing a car, especially when you're
Okay.
also interested in purchasing a home.
Well, I mean, it all boils down, I guess, to your income. Again, I'm not a financial advisor, but I mean, just looking at the scenario by itself, if you're going to do any big purchases, I mean, yes, if you can support it, and if your liabilities are low, if your credit score is a bare minimum where you know at least it's high enough, you bring enough income that can support your expense for that particular purchase, then I will say it's no issue. But then again, if you want to do something like that and we're in the process of getting you approved, or you have already been approved and you did a purchase like that, I would say touch base with whomever that you're getting this mortgage with, or your financial advisor said, look, we're thinking of doing something like this, and I know we're making good enough income. Can you give us the go ahead? Can you run some numbers and let me know if this is a really good choice to do before you go ahead and do it? And then at the end of the day, you've already locked into something, and now you're stressed because you can't make ends meet because you've got this big purchase. You got a home that's coming up that you already purchased and going to be closing. And now because of that, the banks are saying no because they think that the liability is too great of a risk. So these are things that you need to, before you do those things, just research beforehand and get that information beforehand, and before you do something like that. So that would be more in a nutshell what I think will be the best choice.
Thanks for sharing that. The last
No
question
problem.
is, this is for somebody who's a professional, a young professional who just finished post-secondary education
Yes.
and they took OSAP. So,
Mhm.
like, do you think the OSAP loan will impact the opportunity for a young professional to purchase a home?
Oh, I mean, again, it's a liability, right? These are things that's showing up on your credit report once you do decide to go ahead with a purchase. So, depending on how much it is, and again, what's your liability? If you do have an OSAP, but then you're really making good amount of money, and the income is good and is there supporting what is it you need to do? Of course, there is different things you can look at and say, yeah, they do have OSAP, but now that they're working, and the funds that they're making, or the income that they're making, and the liabilities is not that much. So again, you have to kind of weigh that odd and have, again, sit with those financial advisor, whomever it is that you need to do that with, to get to the notion as, is it a good time now? Should I pay that off first before I even consider it? Because I mean,
Mm.
there's a lot of variables in play here before you can actually attempt to, answer a question like that. But for me, as I said, um, from my knowledge and from what I know, when it comes to any kind of liability, could be OSAP. If it's showing up on the report and it is a liability, it's just numbers being crunched and looking at what the bottom line is at the end of the day.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I have no further questions. You have answered all of them. Thank you so much for this amazing presentation. Can you
Thank
kindly
you.
tell the audience how they can reach you if they need further information?
Amazing. Thank you so much. Again, you can call me at my mobile 647-241-7106, or you can text me, and also email SHIRLYNA homes@gmail.com. By all means, I am visible on Instagram as well as Facebook, and on my website, roller page, Real Estate Services Oakville, 905-257-3633. So there are many different ways to get a hold of